His daughter was 10, a year older than Maggie. Norah started then, looked for the children. There were 3, yet in 4 days they seemed to have multiplied, surrounding her with their confused blue eyes and moving mouths. 4-year-old Brendan was clinging to the skirt of her dress. Surely she'd had hold of him most of the way down the aisle. When had she let go? She pried the fabric out of Brendan's fist and grasped his hand so hard he looked up at her in surprise. His hand was mucked with chocolate licorice, which she'd trusted would keep him occupied during Mass, even though the smell made her sick. Her dress, long-sleeved and too warm for the day, was tight over her breasts, which were already fuller. Nobody knew. Aidan stood beside Brendan, wearing the suit and tie he'd worn this past Sunday for Easter. Aidan would turn 9 2 days before Maggie turned 10. Irish twins. Norah located Maggie slightly behind her and reached back with her free hand. But Maggie shied away and then stared back at Norah, daring her to beckon again. Maggie, as the only girl, believed she was Sean's favorite. But it was Aidan who was his heart. Maggie and the boys had Sean's eyes, a striking blue, a shade darker than her own. Maggie glanced at her grandmother, wanting to be her ally instead of Norah's, but Delia, her gaze fixed firmly ahead, didn't seem to notice. Suit yourself, Norah thought, and turned around. Sean's eyes were his mother's eyes. Delia O'Reilly, beautiful still at 65. She'd been an elementary school principal, formerly a teacher, and there was something in her bearing that suggested it, Norah thought. She expected to be listened to. Sean had often called his mother brave. Back in the 1950s, not many people got divorced. Sure as hell nobody Catholic, he'd say. Many of her students had come to the wake, clearly self-conscious in their dress-up clothes, passing right by Norah. The boys kept their hands in their pockets as they mumbled that they were sorry. The girls had more poise, but it was easy to tell the ones who'd never been to a wake before by the way their wide eyes couldn't leave the open casket. Former students had come as well, college-aged, if not in college, and they shook Norah's hand and told her they remembered Sean coming to their classroom in his uniform, and they remembered visits to the firehouse. Norah, too, remembered Sean saying these kids pulling the fire alarm boxes accounted for probably half their runs. Delia would say that's why it was important that he talk to them. He would shake his head, but he never said no to her. The coffin arrived at the bottom of the steps, and Norah started down, going slowly for Brendan. She sensed her brother tense. Cahill was ready to grab her arm if she stumbled. The cameras clicked in chorus. Aidan pressed Sean's helmet against his stomach. She made a mental note to be sure to let Brendan get a chance with the helmet. She would make Aidan give it to him as they were leaving the cemetery when the pipers began Amazing Grace. A few members of the FDNY's pipe and drum band had played at their wedding too, though Sean hadn't been a fireman yet. He'd been waiting to get on the job, increasingly worried that the city's money troubles would keep it from hiring more firemen, needed as they were. When he did get called, only a few months after the wedding, Norah had been too relieved to fret about his safety. A better paycheck, and a steady one, she'd thought, as though he'd been hired to sell insurance. They could move out of his mother's house and into an apartment before the baby came. Cross Hill Cemetery had been closed to new burials for a decade at least, but an exception was being made so Sean could be laid to rest, as the priest put it, near his grandfather and great-grandfather, firefighters both. The newspapers were making much of it. "Legacy of bravery," said one headline. And of course Eileen was in the papers too. The articles about Sean all mentioned that his sister had joined the class action lawsuit against the FDNY, and that she'd graduated from the academy last year in the very first class to include women. The procession halted.